Memories. My mind. Misty watercolored memories of the way Cline was. Cline Cellars, a bastion, one of the first places you pass as you're coming in from, like if you come from the San Fran side into Sonoma, Napa, into wine country. Cline Cellars is one of the first wineries you see when you head into the wine country, such as it is. And 40 years. 40 years is a long time, man. That's they've been around a while. And one of the charming aspects of this winery is that when Fred Cline started this gig, he didn't set out to make Cabernet, Chardonnay, blah, 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 blah. He went a different direction. And that direction was actually dialing into some of the greatest old vine material in the state, which was in Contra Costa County. He made, I think he made his big break, pun intended, by producing a series of world-class Zinfandels in the early 90s during the Zinfandel Renaissance. In the early 90s, well, in the late 80s, I don't know if you know, if you go back this far, but white Zinfandel was the thing, right? So all the great old Zinfandel vines in the state were actually being procured by larger concerns or rented by larger concerns to produce white Zinfandel, because everybody needed huge stacks of white Zinfandel in their stores back then. That was the craze. Now, a lot of people can condemn white Zinfandel and say, oh, white Zinfandel, oh geez, holy cow. But white Zinfandel, the craze, literally saved many of the greatest old vine vineyards in the state. White Zinfandel was the best thing that ever happened to Zinfandel. Because what happened is, as the white Zinfandel trend kind of wore off, a new generation of producers were looking to produce world-class red wines from these grapes. So guys like Deloach and of course Ravenswood was always in there, but then Turley started in the early 90s. And you had Rosenblum killing it, the 3Rs, Ridge was always killing it. But Fred Cline jumped in huge in the early 90s and made some groundbreaking Zinfandels from his old vine vineyards in Contra Costa County, as well as Rhone blends, etc. Then, of course, they got big, they got popular, and you kind of go through waves of like, are we this, are we that, let's make this, let's make that. Some confusion, and what I like now is the bottle we have in front of us today from Cline is coming back. It's coming back the way we were, right? It's coming back to a style of wine that I adore from the Cline family, and that is classic, beautiful old vine Zinfandel. Now, in this case, the Peterson family has this fabulous vineyard in Dry Creek Valley that the Clines get their fruit from, 40 to 100 years old. So the oldest vines planted in 1920, the youngest vines planted in 1980, I think. All head trained bush vines, like the classic old school, beautiful Zinfandel pictures you see. And the beauty of Dry Creek Valley Zinfandel, it's a classic. It is iconic. If you're a Zinfandel fan, you've had tons of great Dry Creek Valley Zinfandels. And this wine is no different. And what I love about Dry Creek is it's complex, right? There's a lot of things going on at Dry Creek Valley Zinfandel. I don't think these are the biggest Zinfandels produced. There's bigger Zinfandels made in other parts of Sonoma. But here, you get layers. You almost get like a wonderful kind of savory herb character in this wine. You get the raspberry, you get the brambles, and actually there's a little exotic, almost like a slight mint character that you get from the Contra Costa wines, but this isn't Contra Costa. This is single vineyard, hardcore Dry Creek Valley. And actually one of the things is he uses a bit of new oak on this, right? Which a lot of folks don't use that much new oak on Zinfandel. But in this case, I think he used like 40% new French oak on this wine. So it gets a pretty luxe treatment. Just joyful. I drink a lot. I drink wines from all over the world, right? I'm not partial to any one particular area or another. But I do have a soft spot, an affinity for great old vine Zinfandel from California, because I believe it is California's wine. This is a heritage wine. And you can taste the heritage here. There's that kind of juicy mid palate. Those brambles and raspberries are fading into like a red cherry character, which kind of expands in the mid palate, which you want to see from old vine Zinfandel. And you don't want it to be porty, right? Great Zinfandel, you don't harvest great Zinfandel at 13.2 or 13.5, although people will argue with you about the old Ridge Zins from the 70s, that kind of thing, but sometimes there were residual sugars. You had really extended growing seasons because it was cooler back then. There's lots of factors why those wines were harvested at that alcohol level. But to me, in the last 30, 40 years, true Zinfandel, you pick in that kind of 14.5 to 15.5 range. That's where usually a lot of the best wines are made because of the berries soak up and the uneven clusters, etc. This one comes in at 14.5, which is kind of right at that line for beautiful classic Zinfandel. You don't want it overly alcoholic, jammy, and porty, but you don't want it too lean. Those mixed clusters, that hens and chicken thing going on in the Zinfandel cluster will produce a lot of really high acid, gnarly, nervy, unsugared berries within the same bunch. And when those soak up, you can have a bit of a nightmare on your hands. You can have a really unbalanced wine. So here we have just perfectly balanced Zinfandel. Now the best part, I don't know if it's the best part, but for me, for selling it, it's the best part. I was gonna buy it anyway, but 93-point Spectator, which is basically the highest score for a 2021 vintage Zinfandel, under $30, right? So they taste everything blind, right? One of the few that do. And when they taste the whole lineup blind, they come through, they roll their scores out, and boom. Fred Cline's wine, 93 points for an under $30, well under $30 bottle of Zinfandel. This hits the shelf at $23. So you can impress your friends, drink a bit of history, enjoy kind of what the Clines have helped build and develop, and get your Dry Creek on. Cheers.